12 million people eat KFC every day around the world. It has more than 30,000 restaurants in exactly 150 countries. Incredibly, they generate $30 billion in revenue per year. However, the story of the man who founded this giant empire is incredible. When he was 65 years old, he had completely gone bankrupt, and all he had left was a monthly Social Security check of $105. He was left with an old car and a chicken recipe. He knocked on the doors of 1,009 restaurants, but received the answer, no. He was kicked out the door. They said, you're too old. Despite all this, he never gave up. At exactly the 1,010th restaurant, he finally received the answer, yes. This person emerged as one of America's most famous businessmen in exactly 10 years. This is the story of Colonel Sanders, who never gave up. In this story, age is just a number. He was born in Henryville, Indiana in 1890. Harlan Sanders lost his father when he was only 5 years old. When his mother was left alone with 3 children, she had to work 12 hours a day at a shirt factory. Little 6-year-old Harlan had a big responsibility: to take care of his siblings and feed them. His mother taught Harlan very simple recipes, and the kitchen became a school for Harlan. By the time he turned 10, he was cooking wonderful meals, but life was still very difficult. At age 12, he dropped out of school and started working. The 28 years that passed from that day were like a nightmare. He worked on farms, sold tickets on trams, joined the army, worked on the railroad, but was fired when he accidentally caused a fire. He tried to become a lawyer, but had to quit. He wanted to sell insurance. He failed. By the time he turned 40, he had worked at more than 40 different jobs. He couldn't succeed in any of these jobs. At age 40, he had bought a small gas station in Kentucky. Now this station was his last chance. Customers who came to buy gas were usually hungry, but there was no suitable place for them to eat. He had to do something. He set up a 6-person table in a corner of the station. He fried chicken with the recipe he learned from his mother for the customers who came. When the first customer tasted it, he was literally shocked. I've never eaten such delicious chicken in my life. The second day, the same man came back with 3 friends. A week later, 20 people came. 2 weeks later, there were exactly 50 customers. Rumors spread among people. Harlan Sanders' chicken is very delicious. In 1935, he opened a full restaurant for 142 people, Sanders Court and Cafe. On opening day, there were exactly 200 people waiting at the door to eat the delicious chicken. There was a small problem. The chicken was cooking in about 30 minutes, and this time was a long waiting period for people. Harlan couldn't sleep at night because of this. He researched, tried, and finally discovered the pressure cooker. He made experiments for months, changed heat and pressure settings. Finally, he found the formula. The chicken was cooking in only 9 minutes, and it was soft inside, crispy outside, fast and delicious as people wanted. Now it was time for that wonderful recipe. He tried to bring different spices together repeatedly: salt, black pepper, garlic powder, red pepper, thyme, cumin. He tested every spice combination and tried to get results by having customers taste. They were saying good, but something is missing. Even though his wife said enough already, Harlan insisted, my chicken must be the best. Finally, he found 11 different spices and the exact proportion of the spices. When he gave it to customers, they ate silently and then said, perfect, the best chicken I've ever eaten. Many asked for this recipe, but Harlan always said with a smile that it was secret. In 1950, the governor of Kentucky tasted his chicken and liked it very much. He honored Harlan Sanders with the Kentucky Colonel honorary title. Harlan started wearing white suits and bow ties. At least 200 to 300 customers were coming during the day. By the time he turned 60, he was finally successful. He paid off his accumulated debts. He bought himself a car and a house. But something he never expected happened. In the 1950s, a new highway called Interstate 75 was built, and the old road passing in front of Sanders's restaurant was completely closed. Customers started to decrease. In just 2 years, 90% of the incoming customers were lost. In 1956, the restaurant went bankrupt. He had to sell everything. He was 65 years old, and again, all he had was his secret recipe, a car and a monthly Social Security check of $105. Most people in this situation would accept failure and retire, but Harlan Sanders thought differently. $105 was a small amount to continue living. He had an idea in his mind: franchising. I give my recipe to other restaurants, they sell the chicken, and I take a share from each sale. Harlan immediately got in his car, put on his white suit, grew his beard, and set out with the Colonel appearance. He went to restaurants and introduced himself. I am Colonel Sanders. I have a wonderful chicken recipe. If you give me just 4 cents from each chicken sale, I want to share this wonderful recipe with you. First restaurant: no. Second: no. Third: no. Each rejection was a different pain. He didn't even have money for a motel in his pocket, and he often had to sleep in his car. At age 65, he was sleeping in the back seat of his car. In the mornings, he washed his face in the service station bathroom, fixed his suit, and looked in the mirror and said, "Today someone will say yes to me." At the 200th rejection, his friends said, "You're old, quit." But he said, "I just need to find the right person." At the 300th rejection, his wife said, "Maybe this business isn't working." At the 500th rejection, there was no support even from his family. At the 700th rejection, a restaurant owner screamed, "Don't come again, I'll call the police." Harlan fell. A 65-year-old man was lying on the ground full length. But he immediately got up, dusted himself off, and went to the next restaurant. He didn't cry, he didn't complain. 900th rejection, 1000th rejection, 1,000 restaurants, 1,000 no's. Most people quit at the 10th rejection, but Sanders continued. Finally, after 109 rejections, he met Pete Harmon. He was a restaurant owner in Salt Lake City, Utah. Pete was tired, but there was faith and passion in this man's eyes. He said, "Okay, let's try." Harlan entered the kitchen, mixed 11 spices, and cooked the chicken in 9 minutes. When Pete tasted it, he said, "Wonderful, this is incredible." That day, they immediately had 50 customers taste it, and everyone who tasted the chicken loved it. Pete said, "Okay, we're making a deal." The first KFC franchise opened in 1952. Pete changed the restaurant's name to Kentucky Fried Chicken. KFC was born. From the first month, chicken sales increased 75%. In the second month, it doubled. By the third month, Pete's restaurant had already become the most successful in the region. The news spread, the Sanders recipe really works. Other restaurants also started joining this. 65-year-old Harlan was no longer on the roads. Restaurants were coming to him. In 1955, just 3 years later, 400 restaurants had taken the franchise. Every restaurant was paying him 4 cents for each chicken. Money started coming, $500 the first month, then $2,000, then $10,000 monthly. By the time he turned 70, he had enough money to be called truly rich, but he wasn't stopping. In 1960, there were 600. In 1963, there were 800 restaurants. Colonel Sanders was now famous. With his white suit, black bow tie, and white beard, he was appearing on television, acting in KFC commercials. He had become America's beloved grandfather figure. In 1964, when he was 74 years old, the company had grown very large. 2 young businessmen offered him $2 million. Sanders accepted this but had one condition for the deal to be complete. "I will continue to act in the commercials. I will always remain as the brand face, and you will pay me an annual salary of $40,000 for life." In the 1970s, with everyone knowing him, the fast food revolution had begun. A year later, KFC started trading on the stock exchange. In 1976, Pete Harmon's first franchise restaurant was still open and successful. Sanders visited him. "You were the first person to say yes to me." Pete said, "Your recipe made me rich." They laughed at this situation that made both of them rich. Then they cried with emotion. When Sanders turned 90, he was still working. When he needed leukemia treatment, doctors said rest. But Sanders said, "KFC is my life. I can't leave it." Shortly after, he passed away at age 90. When Sanders died, he left behind KFC's more than 6,000 restaurants in 48 countries. Annual sales were exactly $2 billion. Currently, KFC has 30,000 restaurants worldwide and serves 12 million customers non-stop every day. It generates $30 billion in annual revenue. This makes it the world's largest chicken restaurant chain. Sanders' secret recipe is still secret and kept in a safe in Kentucky. Colonel Sanders' legacy lives on. His picture is in every KFC. But the real story is this: a man failed at 40 different jobs for 40 years. At age 65, he lost everything and went bankrupt. At age 65, he got in his car and set out, and 109 restaurants said no to him. They kicked him out the door, called him crazy, called him old. But he didn't give up. At the 10th restaurant, he got yes. At age 74, he became a millionaire, and at age 90, he became a legend. The lesson is simple. It's never too late. You're never too old. There are never too many rejections. All you need is to believe in something and never give up. People will say no to you, call you crazy, tell you to quit. Don't care. Will rejection stop you, or will you go to the next door? No matter how old you get, never give up. Always keep pushing the chances behind those doors.